Welcome to the Cracking the Growth Code podcast. I'm your host, Matt Zembruski, and I'm pleased to have as my guest today, Pranav Mehta. Pranav is a vice president of engineering with over 25 years of experience in the industry, and he has led organizations from small to large and a lot of great experience over the years. And I can't wait to pick his brain. So Pranav, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Looking forward to have a great conversation, Matt.
Very good, very good. So as a leader in the engineering world and even in the agile world today, most organizations are agile. But as an agile leader and as a professional with a number of years of experience, the concept of sustainable growth, how would you describe that as it relates to the industry and as it relates to companies? And I choose those words carefully. Sustainable growth. It's not just about growth. But what are your thoughts on sustainable growth? Like, what does that mean in today's economy and in today's industry?
So I think sustainable growth for me is the company needs to continue growing and continue grow top line and bottom line. But there are a lot of factors that drive it because to be able to grow, you need to continue reinventing yourself. You need to keep up to speed with respect to what's going in the industry. I mean, you can see the example, ChatGPT came out and they started talking about generative AI. Now, any website you go, everyone is talking about AI.
Yes.
Right? So how fast people can change and adapt to the new industry trends, that's important. But for me, what drives the growth is predominantly the better technology and the talent. Right? You have great technology, great talent, but then you need great culture also to be able to drive that growth. That's sustainable growth, right? You can have a spurt of a growth, but to have sustainable growth, you need to maintain that culture, right? That no nonsense, no ego, no politics culture. Because soon what I've seen in a lot of companies is companies grow, but as they hire people from outside and they don't try to manage the culture, it can go off balance pretty fast, right? And what it can hurt is it can impact the morale, it can impact a lot of things, productivity, and that affects the sustainable growth that you want to achieve, right? So you need right vision and strategy to start with.
Right.
You need right culture and you need right people. And then on top of that, what I say is you need right leaders to be able to communicate that strategy and vision, and the leader who can connect with the team, who has built the trust to be able to drive that growth. So I'm throwing a lot of things, but there are so many things that come together if you want that sustainable growth.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing all that. You touched on a lot of aspects. Most of our listeners are in the agile space. They're familiar with agile being like the predominant mindset out there in the corporate world today to really be able to adapt to change, which is something you mentioned. You talked about innovation or reinventing yourself, or reinventing your company, your products, your services, etc. But you also talked a lot about the people and the culture, and that's something that's near and dear to my heart. It's how do you get the right people there, and then how do you keep the right people there, and how do you maintain culture over time? So let's talk about culture for a little bit, because I can see that you're passionate about that as well. So you have a small say it's a smaller organization that you're part of, and you have a clear strategy, you have a clear vision, and you know what the culture is because the company may be small, maybe it's only 500 people or so, or 1,000 people in your organization. But now you're going to start hiring and you're going to grow. So talk me through that process a little bit. How do you make sure that you're hiring for the right people that are a match to the culture? Or is that more the responsibility of the leaders when the people get there? How does that?
I would say it's a combination, because having a 2 or 3 hours or 5 hours interview, you might not be able to judge the person, right? But you do want to make sure you ask the questions that tell whether there is a cultural fit or not. The reason I'm saying that is I've seen companies where people try to put others down versus working with them with the same ultimate goal of making the company successful.
Mm.
There are companies where the compensation is laid out in a way that who is doing better or proves that they are better gets compensated more. And that fosters the culture where you see more backstabbing,
Mm-hmm.
you see more non-inclusion, where they do groupism. Some even within a group, you can see two segments where one works on something cool, but they don't want others to know about it.
Right.
And those type of cultures will always affect the productivity and morale and hamper your growth, right? So when you are hiring someone from outside, you want to make sure that they don't bring that type of culture, right?
Right.
That I'm
Right.
superior and I'll do better job than someone else, versus if I'm superior, let me help others to grow also. Because if I help my team to grow and
Mm-hmm.
mentor them and grow them, overall, I'm successful and my company is successful as well, right?
Exactly.
So you need to, when you grow the team, you need to look at the cultural fit. But then also, as I touch base on inclusion, you want to make sure that your junior most to senior most guys can connect. You can have the junior most engineer empowered to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
The senior most architect doesn't have ego to say, hey, why are you asking me question, right?
Right.
If you have the right balance where they work together in harmony, again, it will help with the growth, right? So you need to foster that culture as the leader, which is extremely important. The inclusivity, innovation, right? You will always see that senior guys and most experienced guys drive new things. But sometimes you might be surprised that someone who came just from a university,
Mm-hmm.
as a fresh grad, might have a great idea. So you want to foster that thought process that anyone can have great ideas and they can provide the great ideas. And another thing, I think, culture point of view, I believe in basically empowerment and accountability. In fact, there is a clip floating on LinkedIn of Colin Powell, and then
Yep.
someone from White House, and some intern asked the question, "What is a leadership for you?" And without even thinking, he said, "Trust."
Mm.
Right? In the battlefield, if the soldiers don't trust their leader, they can get killed. Right?
Yes.
Same applies here also. The leaders need to build that trust and connect with their team. And if they foster that culture of openness and inclusivity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has the same goal to deliver great products and drive the growth for the company. I think that is the culture that can give you the sustainable growth.
That's fantastic. And I like the way you talked about the culture and the blend of leadership and all the different levels of experience that are on teams, because most delivery teams say they're 8 people or 10 people these days. There's a big mix of experience that I've seen. And it's important for the ego to be removed and for the people to accept each other and be inclusive. Everybody's voice counts. Everybody's vote and voice and opinion matters equally. And
Yes.
hopefully everybody collaborates. So you mentioned earlier about the motivation behind the individual, right? If you're an individual competitive attitude, just wanting to climb the ladder, that doesn't work as well in a team-based organization where you want to have teams of teams and scale and an agile framework and so forth like that. What are your thoughts and experience and any insights that you have to share related to how the teams are motivated? Was there any performance from your experience? Were there any performance goals that were team-based goals that you put out there to incent the teams to work more together and to grow together, and or maybe from an organization, maybe an organization of maybe 10 or 12 teams? Was there sort of a shared organizational goal to incent them all to sort of work together more? Talk a little bit about that, the
Yeah,
incentives
So I have managed up to 25 Scrum teams working together on a single release, delivering 90 features, right?
Yeah.
Big releases. And the end goal is to get a good quality release with all those features, whether there are critical features or some are engineering improvements, right? Out of the door on the right time, right? Everyone should have that mentality. Now, that's the mentality of the top leaders and directors and others, right? Now, that trickles down to the first line, second line manager level. Their goal is whatever features that they have committed or their team has committed, make sure that you drive that on time with the good quality and support all the activities needed for integration and QA and everything to be able to help with the bigger goal to get all these 90 features out of the door on time, right?
Wow.
So, and from individual engineers' point of view, if they're working in a Scrum and they have Epic and they have certain story points, their goal is to deliver those story points on time with the right quality again to help their Scrum Master or program leader to deliver that feature, right? So it builds up from what individuals can do, then what managers can do, and then what directors and others can do to achieve that end goal, because there are customers who program management team or the product management team has made commitments, right? End goal is to deliver that product or those features to the customer because they might have already planned deployment or other things based on your delivery date, right? So it starts from individual what they can do at Scrum level to bubble up at the release level what you can achieve as a goal.
That's a fantastic way. I like the way you've laid that out from the individual all the way up to the collection of a large number of individuals, large number of teams to deploy a release. Yes. Now from a communication point of view, with all that happening, what are your thoughts on continuous improvement and how the skills how the individuals and the teams get upskilled over time? How do they improve? What sort of internal to a company or external to a company environmental or support systems are in place in order to help continuous improvement happen? You talked about the story points and being delivered, right? And then you want to deliver with high quality. This all takes attention and focus on how can we be a little better tomorrow than we were today, right? How do we continuously improve? What are your thoughts on continuous improvement?
I'll give an example. When 6-7 years back, my team started on Agile, and they had no experience working on Agile. And the years and years in their life, they worked on waterfall. Okay. So when we decided that we are doing the transformation of technology and build this new operating system, so we said, this is a brand new project. We're building something from scratch. Let's jump to Agile bandwagon, right? Yep. And we struggled to figure out, okay, we want to go with 2-week sprint to 4 weeks. Finally, we figured out, I think 3-week sprint was the best spot for us. But the surprising thing was my senior most architects struggled to gauge how many story points they can pick in that sprint. They've never done it, right?
Yeah.
In waterfall, you continue working on it, and once feature is ready, you test it and deliver. Yeah. Now you have to say that in 3-week sprint, what you can finish. So the reason I told this story is that from that point, the continuous transformation started, right? They had to refine their thought on what they can, because they were basically giving 100 story points, they could do even 50, they couldn't even do 50.
Right.
So they had to adjust. But you don't want them to go low. Also, you want to have that sweet spot that they deliver what they command. But once we had few Scrum teams started, and they started into that process, when the new teams I moved from my older legacy OS to work on this new operating system, these existing teams have built that experience They were able to educate them more. So for those new teams, the fine tuning was much shorter. And that's how you can build the knowledge, right? Now, continuous improvement point of view, you always need to refine the process. It's never a dull moment when you are a leader, right? And you have to always look at, okay, how I can improve the process. Now, I'll give you an example that we started with Scrum. Okay, you want a done
Right.
definition.
Get it to done.
Get it to done. So QA can finish it and then you're done. But when you look at a 25 Scrum teams working on 90 features, and a lot of them are intertwined, right? That done becomes 3 sprints effort to be able to have someone to be able to test it. Now, you can still try to make it piecemeal, but when it's really, really ready to test, it's 3 sprints or sometimes 4 sprints. Now, then you need to figure out, okay, can I give something to be able to test in 2 sprints?
Right.
And those are the adjustments that you continuously need to do, right? And you can have continuous integration. You can have all the regressions that you can run 24/7, whether you are run on nightly or run on a weekly basis to provide that protection to the code coming in. But even there also, you need to keep doing adjustments, because if you look at 3 years of releases and you have so many regression scripts and tests built up, guess what? You add more and more, you'll run out of capacity. How fast you can execute that full set of regressions.
Yes.
So then you again need to look at, okay, can I cut down on some scripts? Is there overlap, right? Can I squeeze some scripts, remove the overlap, but then you need to rewrite those scripts or merge those scripts. There is effort to improve, right? So if you look at a scale agile, you always need to look at the possibilities of improvement. Otherwise, it can go easily out of control. Make sense?
It makes really good sense. Yes. Whatever your scaling framework is, you have to look at that, and you always have to keep the transparency of the process in front of you so that you can see if there's opportunities. They call it inspect and adapt, right? In Agile terms, right? How can you consistently inspect and adapt the current processes to make them better,
exactly,
to improve them, to better serve? Because 25 teams, 90 features, and 1 release, there's a lot of coordination and communication, collaboration happening across all the teams.
We had to create a tool to just keep track of all the dependencies, right? Because see, some companies have Scrum teams that are completely self-sufficient. They can deliver the complete feature by themselves, right? All the different components, the knowledge to work on all that is in one place. But when you are looking at an operating system with, say, 30 containers and hundreds of processes, you cannot have one Scrum with the knowledge of everything. So what we have is a technology-based Scrums. And so now when if you are building a vertical feature where you have multiple layers and each layer is managed by a different Scrum team, you have dependencies. And so we build our own tools to monitor those dependencies. We build our dashboard to monitor the execution of the story points. And that way you need to do course correction, because no matter how much you plan, and we did what we call it multi-sprint plan, right? Because you want to look at the end goal that we have committed release by this time. Now backtrack and see how many sprints I have in development and how I can fit that feature in those sprints, which means what I have to do in each sprint leading to that timeline, right?
Yes.
No matter what you do, you miss out something, or some engineer has some emergency, right? So you always need to do those course corrections as you execute to the big picture.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. And I've seen that with a lot of different organizations, the way you describe that. I want to shift gears to talk about some of the obstacles and challenges that you see out there for sustainable growth, leadership and culture, team building and scaling, just everything we've been talking about. What do you see are some of the key challenges in industry today? You mentioned very early on about getting the right people, right? And then growing the culture and keeping the strong culture over time. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges today for executive leaders like yourself in growing organizations?
I think, as I mentioned, hiring right people, but sometimes you don't find the right people, right?
Yeah.
And so now you might need to look at doing upskill of your existing team and backfill them from outside. So one way I have been able to motivate my team is challenging them to pick up the new technology and what they were working on transition to other team. Okay. So now it serves two purposes. They are challenged, they have to do upskill, but they enjoy that. And that's how you can basically attract good talent, but retain good talent as well. And I said attract good talent because the good people or the engineers you get from outside, for them, anything is new.
Yes.
But your existing teams might be working on same product, same feature for, say, 3 years, 4 years. If you are growing, and the reason you are growing is you are successful, right? You have more feature asks, new solutions that customers are asking to build, you can always give that challenge to existing guys who've been working on it, and then offload what they were doing to other teams that you are building. Yes. Right? And that way you can retain the good talent, right? And you can continue attracting good talent. And another thing, the bigger challenge, what I see for position at my level, if you are successful and you have sustaining growth, you have a lot more customers to cater to. Yes, you have a lot more requirements and ask from those customers. And because we are successful, there is a huge challenge on prioritization. You always have more to do in your tech debt or what you call it than what you can deliver. But then you need to strike that balance, which customer to keep happy and which customer you need to tell that you might not get the feature the time you are expecting us to deliver, right? That is always the challenge when you are driving the growth. You are gaining more customers. You want to deliver these features to them to drive the next level of growth, but then you have fixed resources, right? And even though you decide that, okay, to address this gap in the deliveries, you'll hire from outside. You are not able to deliver the features in the next release because you need to train them. You need to incorporate them with the technology, the process, whatever you have, to be able to be productive. And it may happen for some people in that release, but mostly I've seen that they are more productive in the next release.
Yes.
So sometimes the upper management says, okay, I'll give you the rack. That doesn't help all the time.
Exactly. Right? It doesn't.
You still need to have that time to be able to train these guys to be able to deliver what you want to deliver.
That's an excellent overview from your position in executive management of sort of how you see the growth evolve and some of the challenges. I really like the way you describe that, because it's getting the right people there, right? Finding and attracting the right talent. But part of what attracts the talent, you're talking about having a culture of continuous improvement, continuous growth, upskilling, right? Because the talented people in the industry today want to keep growing, right? They want to keep learning. They want to do new things. So as you say, that you have to be conscious of that as an executive leader today. And then you also have the challenge in the growth of across the teams and in keeping everything keeping everything exciting for them over time. The way that you've described it, exciting is probably a better word. Keeping it a culture of growth and nurturing to move them toward their career path, because you want to keep them. So it's attracting the talent, retaining the talent, but in the middle, the way you do that all better is by having a culture.
The resources to be able to keep them challenged and
Yes.
and they like that, and they are learning new technology, so they feel that they are growing as well, right?
Yeah.
They are not stagnant into their knowledge, and they're not doing the same things over and over. So sometimes rotating people definitely helps.
That's really good. That's really good. As we wrap up, I want to ask you a question about to keep it practical, right? A lot of in the industry, there's a lot of there's a lot of theory. There's a lot of books, right? In the Agile and Scrum world, you can get certified in Scrum and product ownership and this and that. There's all these different things, right? It's all textbooks and certification. But from an experience point of view, that's what I found really makes the difference. Like people really want to, like they'll lean in and listen. So from a practical point of view, what are, for our audience is primarily current and future leaders, current leaders like yourself, leading organizations, future leaders. These are the Scrum Masters coming in. These are the Scrum of Scrum Masters and scaled Agile leaders who are in organizations today. That's our audience. So for that audience and your peers out there, what are three takeaways or three tips that you would like to offer them for them to really grow their organizations in ways that you've successfully grown organizations? What are three tips and bits of advice that you have for them?
So I would say have clear strategy and vision and communicate it all the way top to down.
Mm.
You want to make sure that everyone buys into what you're trying to do, why you are trying to do, and how you are trying to do. If they buy into your strategy and vision, or rather vision and strategy to execute it, they will help to execute it better, right? Second, I think that build the trust and rapport or connect with the people, right? The more you connect at leader level, I mean, for me, it was open door policy. I'm okay, and I have talked to junior most engineers to the senior architects and challenge them, right? But if you are able to build that connection, it helps because as a leader, sometimes you need to change the decisions, right? Drop this and pick up that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go and tell them that drop this and pick up that, if you build that trust and you provide the rationale, they'll understand it. And they'll say, okay, we'll go with what you say, right? And the third thing I would say is empower the team and make them accountable. Don't be a micromanager, right? Trust them that they will deliver. If they understand what they need to deliver, they'll deliver. But make them accountable, which means if things don't go right, you can dig deeper, try to understand what went wrong, and do the course correction. But I believe that if you trust your team and empower them, you have a lot more time on your hand to be able to solve business problems and look at bigger picture than trying to go into micromanaging the project.
That's so true. Those are great bits of advice. And to summarize, I heard you say clear strategy and vision. I mean, that's like part one. Be very clear on that, and then communicate it and connect with the people. You want to trust your team. You want your teams and individuals to be able to trust you, and you want to connect with the people. The people connection, so important in today's hyper digital world.
Exactly.
And moving forward with their I lost my train of thought for the third point you were talking.
The third was empowerment and accountability.
Thank you. Empowerment and accountability. And for that one, that's really, really important in agile models today, because as you said, as a leader, you can't micromanage 500, 1,000 people in an organization. You need to empower and hold accountable your leaders, your direct reports, and then they need to hold that, empower and hold accountable. And in an agile model, I would even use the term, how do we best serve the teams? How do we best serve them, right? And that's empowerment and accountability. We're going to empower you to build out the feature. You got 25 teams. Let's empower the release train engineer, or whoever you want to call it, right, across all the teams to deliver that. They don't need you on their back every day or micromanaging them.
Yeah, and it's just server leadership. If there is so I call it myself a facilitator. If you need my help to remove a roadblock, reach out to me, right? But otherwise, until you reach out, I know that you're empowered to execute. And this empowerment needs to go all the way to engineer level.
Yes.
The managers also shouldn't be micromanaging. I mean, agile, right? They allocate a story point, trust that they will execute it.
That's all.
Deliver it, right?
Yes.
If they need any help, you have stand up, they'll raise the concern, address it, right? But don't be on their shoulder, right? Hey, are you on track? Are you on track?
Right. Exactly. That's fantastic, Pranav. And we're about out of time now. I just want to say thank you very much for your time, your energy. We covered so many good topics here about continuous improvement and growth and sustainable growth and leadership and culture. These are all just words in the dictionary, but they're really important concepts to grasp. And the experience you shared, very valuable. For me, I learned a lot. I know our listeners are going to appreciate it. So thank you very much for your time
Thanks
today.
for having me. I had a great conversation with you, and hopefully the listeners will get something out of it.